Something is happening right now at American ports that almost nobody has connected to your supply chain. Filipino sailors, the people crewing the ships that carry your electronics, your furniture, and your food, are being detained by U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents when they step ashore. Over 130 have been arrested and deported since enforcement intensified in 2025. The Philippine Embassy in Washington has filed formal diplomatic protests. Shipping companies are scrambling to explain to their crews that a port call in the United States has become a legal risk. This matters beyond the diplomatic argument. There are roughly 500,000 Filipino merchant sailors currently deployed on ships around the world. They represent approximately 30% of the entire global merchant marine workforce. If this workforce decides, or is forced, to stop crewing ships calling at American ports, the vessels carrying roughly 13% of global container trade would face an immediate, unresolvable crew problem. The people who run the infrastructure this channel has spent months explaining are overwhelmingly Filipino. Almost nobody in the consuming world knows their names. To understand why the Philippines supplies nearly a third of the world's merchant sailors, you have to understand what the global shipping industry was actually looking for when it built its labor system. A ship needs a captain, officers, engineers, and ratings. The captain and senior officers must hold internationally recognized certifications under a framework called the Standards of Training, Certification and Watchkeeping, known as the STCW Convention, adopted by the International Maritime Organization in 1978. These certifications require formal maritime education, sea time, and examinations. They are not informal qualifications. They represent genuine technical competence. What shipping companies also needed was that competence at the lowest possible cost. A European officer on a container ship earns between $8,000 and $15,000 per month, depending on rank and flag state. A Filipino officer in an equivalent role earns between $2,000 and $4,000 per month. A Filipino rating, the general crew doing deck and engine work, earns roughly $700 to $1,500 per month. The arithmetic of a ship's annual crew cost is not subtle. A 25-person crew composed primarily of Filipino sailors might cost $4 to $6 million per year. The same crew composed of European or American workers might cost $15 to $20 million. On a fleet of 50 ships, that gap is several $100 million annually. In an industry where margins are measured in dollars per container, that differential determines whether a shipping line is profitable. The Philippines did not stumble into this position, it engineered it. Following the STCW Convention, the Philippine government made a deliberate national policy decision to build maritime training infrastructure at a scale no other developing country attempted. The Maritime Industry Authority, known as MARINA, was established to oversee and certify training institutions. Maritime academies were expanded and multiplied. Curricula were aligned to STCW requirement. The Philippines trained seafarers to the exact international standard that shipping companies needed, in English, at a cost structure that made Filipino sailors the most economically attractive STCW certified workforce on Earth. By the 1990s, the Philippines had become the default answer to the question of where ships found their crews. Greek shipping families, Japanese shipping companies, German operators, Norwegian tanker owners, all learned that calling Manila was how you solved a crew requirement. Manning agencies, which are the private companies that match seafarers to shipping contracts, became a significant industry in their own right, charging placement fees and managing deployment for hundreds of thousands of workers simultaneously. Today, the Philippines has over 1,500 licensed manning agencies. They serve as the intermediary between a Greek shipowner who needs a chief engineer and a certified Filipino engineer in Manila waiting for his next contract. The system operates at industrial scale because the demand has never stopped growing. What comes back from the sea is what holds the Philippine economy together. In 2024, Filipino seafarers sent home approximately $7 billion in remittances from foreign ports, from the accounts of workers earning in dollars and euros who have families in the Philippines spending in pesos. For every peso a Filipino seafarer sends home, research by the University of Asia and the Pacific estimated that nearly 3 additional pesos circulate through the domestic economy. The seafaring industry directly generated $17 billion in economic activity in 2024 and contributed approximately 4% of Philippine GDP. That figure understates the dependency. Seafarer families concentrate in specific regions: Iloilo, Cebu, the Visayas. In those communities, the seafaring economy is not a percentage of GDP. It is the economy. Schools are funded by tuition paid from seafarer remittances. Houses are built with ship money. Local businesses run on spending from households whose breadwinner is currently somewhere in the Pacific. The contract system is what makes this sustainable in the short term and precarious in the long term. A Filipino seafarer typically signs a 9 to 12-month contract to crew a specific vessel on a specific route. When the contract ends, the sailor returns to the Philippines and waits for the next placement. There is no continuous employment, no pension accumulation in most cases, and no guarantee the next contract comes when the savings run out. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed exactly how fragile the arrangement is for the workers inside it. When countries began closing borders in early 2020, crew changes became impossible at most ports. A Filipino sailor whose 9-month contract ended in May 2020 had nowhere to go. Ships were not allowed to land crew in most countries. The Philippines did not have repatriation flights operating at sufficient scale. Hundreds of thousands of Filipino seafarers remained at sea past their contract end dates, some for 12 months, some for 18. The International Transport Workers Federation, which monitors seafarer welfare globally, documented hundreds of cases of severe psychological distress among crew members unable to return home. Some ships experienced incidents related to crew fatigue and mental health. The technical term used in IMO reports is crew welfare emergency. The practical term is that the people running global trade were trapped by a system that had no mechanism for returning them home when the mechanism that normally did this stopped working. Shipping continued. The containers kept moving. The sailors kept working. Most consuming countries never knew any of it was happening. The current situation at American ports introduces a new layer to this structural dependency. Under immigration enforcement policies applied since 2025, Filipino seafarers arriving at U.S. ports for brief shore leave have been classified under standard immigration scrutiny. For seafarers whose documentation or visa categories do not align precisely with the new enforcement interpretation, the result has been detention and deportation. The Philippine government has formally protested. Shipping industry associations have filed representations with the relevant agencies, explaining that crew-shore access is a standard operational requirement under International Maritime Convention. The economic logic of the enforcement, applied in isolation, may be internally consistent. The economic logic of the shipping system it is disrupting is not a secondary consideration. American ports collectively process roughly 13% of global container trade. The ships arriving at those ports are crewed in large part by Filipino sailors. A workforce that perceives American port calls as carrying personal legal risk begins factoring that risk into contract decisions. Manning agencies begin directing their workers toward routes that avoid the exposure. It is not a dramatic collapse. It is a quiet rerouting of labor supply away from a market that made itself unwelcoming. The global shipping system made a choice over 50 years. It decided that the cheapest way to crew ships was to hire workers from economies where skilled labor could be obtained at a fraction of the cost of the consuming world. The Philippines positioned itself to be that supplier and built an economy around the arrangement. The result is a structure where 30% of the workforce running the machinery of global trade earns wages that would not cover rent in the cities whose stores their cargo fills, and where one country's economic stability depends on a workforce deployed on ships registered in Panama, flagged in Liberia, owned by Greek families, and crewed under contracts that expire every 9 months. Every container that has arrived at your door since the 1990s has a probability of roughly 1 in 3 that someone from the Philippines helped move it. Most people in the consuming world have never thought about that. Right now, at a port in the United States, some of those people are being detained. The containers are still arriving. The connection between the two facts has not yet been made loudly enough for most people to hear. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.